Well, we know 2024 was one of the most difficult schedules in Georgia history. 2025 sets up okay, I have to say. Matchups with Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss are all home dates. Georgia only plays 3 true road games in 2025. One of them will be the third week of the season at Tennessee. They go at Auburn, sandwiched between the Kentucky and Ole Miss game, and then they travel to Mississippi State the week between Florida and Texas. This is just on the straight look of this thing real quick. This is not a bad schedule for Georgia at all. I mean, if I were Kirby Smart and them, I would be excited about the situation that this week presents it. This schedule presents. I mean, it's we knew it'd be a lot better than 24 because it'd be hard to be bad as far as all that's concerned. But I think this is a manageable schedule. Let me go through it, and we're going to talk about it just for a little bit. It's breaking news. It's hard for me to spit this out all at once. So you open the season with Marshall, who's going to have a brand new head coach, and then you have Austin Peay. I want to point out Texas plays Ohio State on the road week 1. Alabama plays at Florida State week 1. Then Georgia plays Austin Peay at home. Of course, the Marshall game was supposed to be at UCLA. That got nixed. And so then Georgia's first, critical matchup, they play Tennessee and Alabama out of the gate. So you will know very quickly, just like you did this year, how good Georgia is. So it's first 5 weeks of the season, Georgia plays Marshall, Austin Peay at Neyland, week off, then Bama. And then you look at this situation here. I mean, I don't know what Auburn's going to be like. I'm assuming that there will be no coaching changes at Kentucky or Ole Miss or Auburn, but I don't know. So then the Cats come in to start October. You got to go to Auburn, which is always just a hard place to play no matter what. And then they welcome Ole Miss. I don't know if we can really expect Ole Miss to be as good as they were this year, but let's just see. Got an open date before the Gators. That game will probably be challenging. And then they play at Mississippi State. And they close with a pretty good slate here with Texas at home on November 15th. The big 3 games on this one are going to be at Tennessee. Well, 4. I'll just say 4. At Tennessee, Alabama at home, Florida, and then Texas at home. So a completely manageable schedule to me. They play Charlotte and Athens the week before playing Tech. That is announced for the 29th in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz. That game's not even at Grant Field, Mark Rick Field. So it's, this is about as good as you're going to get. I mean, you have to play road games that you were playing. You always play at Auburn and Tennessee. Like, that's not new. I mean, this is part of playing in the SEC. It's extremely challenging to play at Neyland and at Auburn. But again, it's really hard to play in Tuscaloosa. It's hard to play in Death Valley. It's hard to play in Sanford Stadium. There's a lot of places that are Darrell K. Royal. I mean, there's a lot of places that you're going to play hard road games. It's just what it is. And I think it's a fun, this is a good schedule for Georgia. I don't really know how else to say it. Now, I'm just looking at the rest of the SEC schedule, and it's week 1, as I talked about earlier, Alabama goes to Florida State. Then you've got, I don't know why Florida is playing Long Island. I'm not aware that that's a legitimate football school, but okay. You got Alabama at Florida State, LSU at Clemson. You have Tennessee and Syracuse playing in Atlanta, Texas at Ohio State, and then you've also got the day after on the Sunday, you've got South Carolina playing Virginia Tech in Atlanta. So you got a good back-to-back there. A lot of SEC, ACC matchups, and then you also have Texas going to Ohio State. That's a huge game. Week 2. Not as great, but we go straight into conference play with Ole Miss going to Kentucky. And I'm looking at this for the first time. Michigan plays at Oklahoma. That's curious. I don't know what to make of that. Vandy plays at Virginia Tech. Week 2 is pretty weak. Just looking at it very quickly from the SEC's perspective. South Carolina State goes to Carolina. That's different. That's like a 40-minute trip for the Bulldogs. Arkansas at Memphis on week 3, we start getting down to nitty-gritty a little bit. The Gators travel to Miami. Tulane at Ole Miss, Carolina goes to Missouri. Auburn at Oklahoma. So some decent games there. Notre Dame at Arkansas on week 4, which is like you can see what they're going to do week 4. I can tell you right now what's going to happen. It's going to open, almost certainly open Notre Dame at Arkansas. Go to LSU at Ole Miss as the 3:30, and then Alabama, Georgia at night. That's a great weekend right there. They're already stacking it up, and they're burning Tennessee at Mississippi State. They're burning Kentucky at Carolina. They're burning Auburn at Auburn at A&M. You got some really good games that weekend. That LSU Ole Miss being that early in the season is curious. So the lowest, the smallest weekend is another what looks like big headline. I mean, they're stacking these again. I mean, I think Kentucky at Georgia is probably going to be a 3:30. Texas at Florida at night. And then you have the alternating Vandy at Alabama, could be noon, and then Mississippi State A&M could be noon. That's a good question. But only 5 games in the league total that week. It's not great. The week of Texas-Oklahoma is the same week Georgia plays Auburn. You also have South Carolina at LSU. You got Washington State at Ole Miss, which is curious. Ole Miss, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama at Missouri. So a lot of choices the week of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. I do not see Texas OU being at night. So Georgia at Auburn could certainly be at night. South Carolina LSU could be at night as well. We'll just see. Third weekend of October, you got the traditional thing. I mean, Tennessee, Alabama will probably be at night. But I'm just looking at all this other stuff. I mean, Ole Miss, Georgia will be 3:30. If I had to guess, you got some other games. A&M at Arkansas, Mizzou at Auburn, State at Florida. It's a good weekend with your Alabama, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, Georgia. That will be the flag bearers on that deal. Georgia's week off is Tennessee at Kentucky, which has been Georgia, Florida weekend, but Tennessee at Kentucky, Auburn, Arkansas, A&M, LSU, which should be the night game you would think. Ole Miss at Oklahoma, Alabama at South Carolina, Vanderbilt and Missouri. Georgia, Florida, I can't imagine that game is going to be moved from 3:30 ever. So that should be your like middle game. I don't know who would be at night though, because you've got Oklahoma at Tennessee, you've got Carolina at Ole Miss, which kind of to me would be the night game, and then you've got some other games in there. Alabama at LSU at Alabama. The week after Georgia, Florida, Georgia at State, Florida at Kentucky. A&M at Missouri, Auburn at Vanderbilt. A lot of kind of nondescript games there. And then the second to last weekend, you've got some really good games. Like they stacked it up maybe a little too much on this weekend. State at Missouri, Florida at Ole Miss, Arkansas at LSU, Oklahoma at Alabama, Texas at Georgia. Texas, Georgia will be at night. Just that'll be what it is. Georgia, Auburn will be at night. Texas, Georgia will be at night. I said Georgia, Auburn. Bama, Georgia will be at night. Texas, Georgia will be at night. The penultimate weekend, you've got Kentucky, Vandy, Arkansas at Texas, Mizzou, Oklahoma, and then you've got Tennessee at Florida. Wow, that is deep into the season. Jeez. So that should be your night game. You'd think. I don't know how good Tennessee. I mean, like Tennessee should be pretty good. And then, rivalry weekend, there's no adjustments here. And we know some of these games will not be these weekends. No one's told me this at Georgia. No one in Disney's told me. I got pretty good connections at Disney as well as at Georgia. No one's told me this. Do not take this to the bank. I mean, Tech, Georgia, I would imagine almost certainly will be on Black Friday. Almost certainly. I would imagine State Ole Miss will be on Black Friday as well, but you've got options here. I mean, like, Mizzou, Arkansas, Alabama, Auburn will not be. Florida State could be, but I think Tech, Georgia, I would imagine from here on out, people should nestle in with the idea that Georgia is going to play Georgia Tech on Black Friday for a while. But I mean, just like looking at Georgia's schedule, let me look at Bama's just real quick. I mean, they go to Florida State, they host Wisconsin, they play at Georgia. They play 3, I would say, legitimate games in their first 4 games. Bama, has an off week before Georgia. That's smart. And then they have a couple of tough back-to-backs. They've got, they've got. I don't know what Missouri will be, but at Missouri won't be great. That'll be tough. So this trio here for Bama at Mizzou, Tennessee, and then at Carolina, that's going to be a challenge. And then they got a back-to-back with LSU, Oklahoma. Not easy. Arkansas plays. They play 3 games in a row that they could lose. They play at Ole Miss, at Memphis, at Notre Dame. Those games will all, that'll matter a lot. If they can figure out how to beat Notre Dame at home, that'd be a big deal. Auburn, week before Georgia is an open date, so there you go. That's 2 opens. We know the Gators a week before Georgia is open, so that's 3 opens. Kentucky plays Carroll at South Carolina the week before they play at Georgia. Ole Miss is hosting Washington State before they play Georgia. They got an open date before Wazoo. Mississippi State plays at Arkansas the week before Georgia. Missouri and Oklahoma do not play Georgia. Neither does Carolina. Tennessee is going to play 3 games in 13 days. Oh, no, 3 games in 14 days. No, that's right. So they'll play East Tennessee State before they play Georgia at home. I mean, Tennessee definitely could get it rolling here. I don't think it's out of the question to say they beat Georgia and Neyland. I don't know that. I mean, we'll just see what happens. I don't think it's out of the question. And Texas has an open date before Georgia. So a lot of open dates before Georgia. And that's a good question. Now, to be fair, there are, Texas has got to do, I think it's great that they played Ohio State this year because these out of conferences are really weak, particularly weak. They play one legitimate out of conference game. Georgia does this year. They had scheduled UCLA. And I do not know Texas's situation, so I don't want to opine on it too much. Notre Dame's playing 2 SEC teams this year. So they play Arkansas and Texas A&M, one at home, one on the road. So we'll just see what happens with the Irish. But as I said, Texas, Alabama, Florida, and somebody else, Auburn, are all telling you who they think the big games are in their season. Georgia, they are always going to have a week off before Florida. That changed that series in many ways. They have it this year as well. I think. The open, so Georgia's sandwich, it's not a traditional back-to-back, but Tennessee and Bama, I mean, the season in a way could be on the line against, with Alabama. This is a tricky schedule a little bit, but I think it's very manageable. I mean, to be honest with you, I think I can't complain about it too much, man. I mean, when you, I'll stick it on the screen here. I don't know why I didn't put it on the screen earlier. But when you look at the situation that Georgia's in with this game, with this schedule, I mean that's not bad at all. They may be favored in every single game they play. I don't know what's going to happen with Auburn. That's a good question, but they'll be favored. Just talking here. I mean, they'll be favored against Alabama at home. They'll be favored against Texas at home. They will be favored at home, Georgia, unless the season's going down the hill. But I mean, at Tennessee, I would imagine they'd be favored, but I don't know by how much. And then at Auburn, they'll be favored, but so I would imagine Georgia could be favored in all their games now. Texas, I think, was favored in all their games this year. They got 2 losses. Georgia, the 2 games they lost, they were favored in those games. So I think this is a nice schedule for Georgia. I think that, you get to play 2 games in September. I mean, Georgia's schedule this year was so backloaded in a way at home. 3 games right at the end. They're going to have 2 at the end this one. But I think, when you're taking a look at this thing, Georgia is really going to only be at a disadvantage in a big way at Neyland and at Auburn. That's it. All these other games, I mean, at State, you're going to have several thousand Georgia fans at State. And then, with Jacksonville and Atlanta, Georgia will be the larger side in both those. I mean, certainly there will be more Georgia fans at the Dome for the Tech game than there will be Tech fans by a lot. And then, I do, I do find it, I have to say, funny, the capitulation from the Tech folks who, maybe they shouldn't be so firm in their beliefs that they would not play Georgia at the Dome, or their sort of narratives that they build up in their brains and all this stuff. But I think it was a smart move, to be honest with you, to take the $10 million and play Georgia at the Dome and just take that money. I mean, there's no certainty that they lose that game. So, but it is funny to remember the way that they were so adamant at the time that they would not play Georgia at the Dome, and here we are. So I like this schedule for Georgia. Generally speaking, it sure looks a lot easier than this year's schedule, but we'll see. I mean, like, what if Auburn's figured a lot of stuff out? Tennessee the same way. You don't know what you don't know. That's the way I would put it. Now, I do want to revisit Oklahoma just for a second here, because they got the short end of the stick on this whole deal. Oklahoma, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's do or die time. Why are you playing at Temple? I'm just seeing that. Like, that is insane to me. So Oklahoma goes Illinois State and then Michigan at home, and then they play at Temple. That is bizarre. I just don't understand that at all. Auburn, open date, Kent State. Then they get Texas and Dallas. They play at Carolina. Ole Miss they host. They play at Tennessee. Open week off at Alabama, Missouri at home, and LSU at home. That's a tough schedule, man. That is a tough schedule. And we know Oklahoma. We know, in quotations, we know that OU is supposed to play Georgia in 26 in theory. So we'll just see. I mean, I think for Kirby Smart and Georgia, this is the type of schedule that is completely manageable. I'm not sure I see more than 2 losses. I'm not sure I see 2. I mean, Georgia should beat Alabama at home. They should beat Texas at home. Again, this is right here. The Tennessee game, this probably is the season right here. I think just being straight, I think if you get a split there, you're probably playing the SEC championship game. But I think winning both is more likely than losing both. But I think a split is, we got to live in the real world now, y'all. The notion that you're just going to go undefeated, this isn't the Big Ten. This isn't the ACC, this isn't those leagues. And we're just in a different world. I want to thank you for watching. I know I rambled on, but it was breaking news, and I wanted to make sure I got all the thoughts I could out of it. I think it's a really manageable schedule for Georgia. Thanks for watching.